I stared at my reflection in the yacht's polished brass rail, barely recognizing the woman who gazed back. The Mediterranean breeze whipped my hair around my face while the setting sun painted everything in deceptive shades of gold. Including him. Another drink? His voice carried across the deck, smooth as aged whiskey. I shouldn't have been there. The spontaneous weekend getaway with my college friends had already stretched my carefully planned budget. But something in the air that evening made all my usual precautions seem ridiculous. Maybe it was the way the champagne bubbles danced in my blood, or how the gentle rock of the waves made everything feel dreamlike. My name is Hannah, and this is the moment I started losing myself. I'd love one. I turned to face Ryan Parker. Watching as he navigated the deck with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned their place in the world. He handed me a fresh glass, his fingers brushing mine deliberately. You don't seem impressed by all this. He gestured at the luxury yacht, his family's wealth on display in every gleaming surface. Should I be? The words slipped out before I could stop them, sharper than intended. He laughed, and the sound sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. God, no. It's refreshing actually. Most women I meet here can't wait to tell me how amazing everything is. I'm an accountant, I said, swirling the champagne. I calculate value for a living. This? It's just numbers with a nice view. Just numbers? His eyebrow arched. That's cold. Realistic. Dance with me. It wasn't a question. He already had my hand, pulling me closer to where the yacht speakers spilled music across the deck. My friend Sophie caught my eye from across the deck, giving me an exaggerated thumbs up. I shot her a warning look, but couldn't help smiling. This wasn't me, the impulsive dancing, the flirting with strangers on expensive boats. I built spreadsheets and security nets. I planned. What are you thinking? Ryan's breath was warm against my ear. That this is probably a mistake. The best things usually are. His hand tightened at my waist. Tell me something real, Hannah. Something that isn't about numbers. I pulled back slightly, studying his face. I hate surprises. I color-code my calendar. I haven't done anything truly spontaneous in years. Until tonight. Until tonight, I agreed. The music changed, but we kept swaying. Over his shoulder, I noticed an older woman watching us from the upper deck. Her expression was unreadable in the growing darkness, but something about her steady gaze made me uneasy. That's my mother, Ryan said, following my look. Margaret Parker. Don't worry about her, she watches everyone like that. Especially me. Charming. She's built an empire. Charm wasn't required. He spun me suddenly, making me laugh despite myself. But we don't have to talk about her. Tell me more about this color-coded calendar of yours. Why? Planning to disrupt it? His smile turned predatory. Absolutely. Later, I would remember this moment, the music, the lights of the coast twinkling in the distance, the way Ryan's eyes never left mine. I would remember it and wonder how I missed all the warning signs. How I didn't see that his charm was a carefully constructed weapon, that his mother's watchful gaze wasn't protective but calculating. That this whole evening was the beginning of something that would tear my carefully ordered world apart. But right then, with the Mediterranean night wrapping around us like silk, I just let myself fall. After all, the best things in life are mistakes, right? Wrong. So devastatingly wrong. The Parker Enterprises lobby gleamed with the same polished perfection as that yacht where I'd first met Ryan 6 months ago. Now, as his wife and newest employee, I clicked across the marble floor, my heels echoing like tiny gunshots in the vast space. Mrs. Parker. The security guard's greeting still made me flinch. That name didn't feel like mine, even after the whirlwind wedding that had left my brother Mark shaking his head in disbelief. The elevator doors opened to reveal Margaret, imperious in charcoal gray, her lips pressed into their perpetual line of disapproval. You're late. Traffic. I stepped in beside her, fighting the urge to check my appearance in the mirrored walls. The board meeting isn't for another hour. In this family, early is on time is late. She didn't look at me as she spoke. Ryan should have explained that. Ryan explains what Ryan wants to explain. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Margaret's reflection smiled, sharp as a paper cut. Perhaps you're not as naive as I thought. The elevator stopped at the executive floor, but Margaret held the door. Join me for coffee. It wasn't a request. I followed her into her corner office, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a god's-eye view of the city. She gestured to a chair while preparing 2 espressos with mechanical precision. How are you finding married life? She placed a cup before me, the china so delicate it seemed ready to shatter at a harsh word. Different than expected. I wrapped my fingers around the warm porcelain. But I'm adjusting. Are you? She settled across from me. Because from where I sit, you look like a woman realizing she's bought counterfeit goods at full price. My cup clattered against its saucer. Excuse me? Oh, don't misunderstand. Ryan can be charming when he wants something. But charm fades, doesn't it? Especially when the pressure starts. She leaned forward. Tell me, has he started asking about children yet? The question hit like a slap. Last night's argument about starting a family echoed in my head, Ryan's insistence that we needed an heir. My request for more time to establish myself at the company. I see he has. Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. Did you know his first wife miscarried twice before they divorced? The espresso turned bitter in my mouth. First wife? He didn't mention Charlotte? How convenient for him. She checked her watch. The board's waiting. We'll continue this discussion later. I sat frozen as she gathered her things, my mind racing. Through the glass walls, I watched employees scurrying past, their faces carefully blank. A flash of movement caught my eye, Ryan, emerging from his office with a stunning blonde I'd never seen before. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm with familiar ease. That's Jenna Collins. Margaret's voice carried a note of warning. New hire in accounting. Quite ambitious, from what I hear. I stood, smoothing my skirt with trembling hands. Why are you telling me all this? Because, my dear, in this family, information is currency. She paused at the door. And I prefer to know where my investments stand. The board meeting passed in a blur. I presented my financial projections while watching Ryan and Jenna exchange glances across the table. When voices rose near the end, I caught fragments of a heated discussion by the water cooler. Can't keep this quiet forever. She doesn't suspect. Just like Charlotte. My phone buzzed, a text from Mark, free for lunch? Need to talk. I typed back quickly, yes. Please. Walking back to my office, I passed Ryan's door just as Jenna emerged, adjusting her blouse. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away, a small smile playing at her lips. Inside my office, I opened my laptop and began a new spreadsheet. But instead of numbers, I started listing names, dates, and overheard conversations. If Margaret was right about information being currency, it was time I started banking some of my own. The familiar comfort of organizing data calmed my racing thoughts. After all, I was good with patterns, good at spotting irregularities. And something in this perfect corporate facade was definitely irregular. Ryan's first wife. Jenna Collins. Margaret's warnings. All pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known I needed to solve. Until now. The annual Parker family dinner felt like a performance where everyone knew their lines except me. I watched Ryan charm the room while Jenna, somehow invited as key staff, hovered at the edges like a shark scenting blood. More wine? Margaret's voice carried an edge as she refilled my glass. We stood in her mansion's formal dining room, surrounded by oil paintings of stern-faced Parkers who seemed to judge my every move. The quarterly numbers exceeded expectations, Ryan announced to the assembled board members and family shareholders. Thanks in no small part to our new talent acquisition. His eyes flickered to Jenna, who preened. I gripped my wine glass tighter. Interesting. Since those reports haven't crossed my desk yet. The room stilled. Ryan's smile didn't waver, but his knuckles whitened around his fork. Darling, you've been so busy with the Miller account. Which wrapped last week. I took a deliberate sip of wine. Funny how these things keep bypassing the head of financial oversight. Jenna stepped forward, all practiced concern. Oh, I left those reports on your desk yesterday. Perhaps they got misplaced? Nothing gets misplaced in my office. I met her gaze steadily. Just like nothing gets misplaced in the company accounts. Speaking of which, has anyone reviewed the recent wire transfers to our Cayman subsidiary? Ryan's fork clattered against his plate. Margaret, who'd been watching the exchange like a tennis match, suddenly smiled. An excellent point, Hannah. Perhaps we should discuss those transfers now. This isn't the time, Ryan started. It's exactly the time, Margaret cut in. Jenna, dear, since you've been handling those transactions, why don't you enlighten us? Jenna's composure cracked for just a moment. I need to consult my files. I have them here. I pulled out my phone, watching her face pale. Interesting pattern of movements. Almost like someone's building a nest egg. Or planning an escape route. Ryan, Jenna's voice turned plaintive. Tell them about our plans. Plans? Margaret's eyebrow arched dangerously. Ryan stood abruptly. Mother, Hannah, this is hardly appropriate dinner conversation. Sit down, Ryan. Margaret's command cracked like a whip. Hannah, continue. I projected the spreadsheet onto the dining room wall using my phone. 3 months of systematic fund diversions. Small enough to slip notice, unless you know where to look. I always know where to look. You bitch, Jenna hissed. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I advanced to the next slide. Just like I know about Charlotte. Ryan's face went ash white. Around the table, several board members shifted uncomfortably. Who's Charlotte? Jenna demanded. Ryan's first wife, Margaret supplied, almost cheerfully. The one who discovered his previous indiscretions. Before her unfortunate accident. The room erupted in whispers. Jenna's eyes darted between Ryan and the door. There was no accident, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. But there was a very interesting insurance payout. One that's still paying dividends through a series of shell companies. Companies that, until recently, were receiving those Cayman transfers. Ryan lunged for my phone, but Margaret's hand shot out, catching his wrist. Enough, Ryan. You've embarrassed this family for the last time. You don't understand, he snarled. I built this company. You built nothing, Margaret snapped. You inherited everything and squandered it on schemes and women who saw you coming a mile away. Hannah, continue with your findings. But Jenna had heard enough. She bolted for the door, her heels echoing down the marble hallway. Ryan moved to follow, but 2 board members blocked his path. The police have already been notified, I said quietly. About both the fraud and Charlotte's case being reopened. Ryan's face contorted. You were supposed to be different. Easy. Controllable. That was your first mistake. I turned to the board. I've prepared a complete audit. You'll find everything you need to know about the systematic fraud and where the money really went. Including who helped cover it up. As security arrived to escort Ryan out, Margaret touched my arm. Well played. Though I suspect this isn't over. No, I agreed, watching my husband being led away. But then, that's exactly what I'm counting on. Through the window, I saw Jenna being stopped at the gates. Everything was falling into place, just like in my spreadsheets. But unlike numbers, revenge had a taste, bitter, bright, and surprisingly satisfying. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Ryan's face as he sat across the interview room table. 3 days after the dinner party revelation, and he still wore his arrogance like expensive cologne. "Drop the charges," he said, his voice low and controlled. "We can still fix this." I leafed through the manila folder before me, letting the silence stretch. "Like you fixed things with Charlotte?" "You don't know anything about Charlotte." "I know enough." I slid a photograph across the table, Charlotte's car wrapped around a tree. The brake lines didn't fail by accident. His jaw tightened. "Accusations without proof are worthless." "I know." I pulled out another document. "That's why I had these forensic reports redone." The door opened, and Mark stepped in. My brother's presence had always steadied me, but today he radiated barely contained fury. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." He emphasized the last word, staring at Ryan. "This is a private conversation," Ryan snapped. "Not anymore." Mark sat beside me. "See, when my sister started digging into your past, I did some digging of my own. Found some interesting people. Charlotte's brother, for instance." Ryan's composure cracked. "You contacted James?" "He's very interested in reopening the investigation." I watched Ryan's hands begin to shake. "Especially after learning about the insurance policy you took out 2 weeks before the accident." "You stupid bitch." Ryan lunged forward, but Mark was faster, shoving him back into his chair. "That's assault on camera," Mark said quietly. "Want to try for more charges?" My phone buzzed, a text from Margaret, "Jenna talking. Everything. Come now. We're done here." I stood, gathering my files. "Your lawyer can contact mine about the divorce proceedings. You think you can just walk away?" Ryan's laugh held an edge of hysteria. "You're nothing without me. A glorified accountant who got lucky." "Lucky?" I turned back. "I'm the one who found the pattern in your wire transfers. I'm the one who traced Charlotte's accident back to you. And I'm the one who's going to watch everything you built crumble while you sit in a cell wondering how you underestimated me so badly." His face contorted. "Margaret put you up to this." "She never wanted." "Margaret didn't have to put me up to anything. You did that yourself, every time you thought I was too stupid to notice, too weak to fight back." I moved to the door. "Goodbye, Ryan." In the hallway, Mark caught my arm. "You okay?" "No." My hands were shaking now. "But I will be. There's something else." He glanced around before lowering his voice. "The detective found more cases. 2 other women before Charlotte. Different names, same pattern." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "How many?" "They're still investigating." "But Hannah, this goes deeper than we thought." "Margaret knew. She had to have known." My phone buzzed again. "Hurry. Things changing fast. I have to go." I straightened my spine. "Margaret's waiting. Be careful." Mark's concern was palpable. "She's not your ally just because she's Ryan's enemy." I nodded, already moving toward the exit. In my car, I pulled out my own file, the one I hadn't shown Ryan. Bank statements, property deeds, and a series of emails that painted a very different picture of Margaret's role in all of this. The Parker empire wasn't just built on ambition and business acumen. It was built on secrets, on carefully orchestrated accidents and convenient disappearances. Ryan wasn't the disease, he was a symptom. My phone lit up one more time. "Don't trust anyone." Jenna. The wild card I hadn't counted on. Was she really turning on Ryan, or was this another layer of manipulation? I started the car, watching Ryan being led to a holding cell through the station window. He looked small suddenly, diminished. But Margaret was waiting, and with her, answers I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. The game was changing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about survival. And I had a feeling I'd just scratched the surface of how deep this rabbit hole went. Margaret's office felt like a trap, all gleaming surfaces and sharp edges. Jenna sat in one of the leather chairs, her usual polish cracked, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. The sight should have satisfied me. Instead, it made my skin crawl. "Show her," Margaret commanded. Jenna's hands trembled as she pushed a USB drive across the desk. "It's all there. Everything Ryan made me do. Everything he made the others do before me." I picked up the drive, turning it over. "Why now?" "Because I found out what happened to Sarah." Jenna's voice cracked. "The girl before Charlotte. She wasn't just another mistress who disappeared. She was pregnant." Margaret's face remained impassive, but her knuckles whitened around her crystal tumbler. "Ryan always was careless with loose ends." "Loose ends?" The words tasted like acid. "Is that what we're calling murdered women now? We're calling them necessary sacrifices for the greater good." Margaret stood, moving to the wall of family photos. "This company employs thousands. Supports entire communities. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made. Did Sarah's family consider her death a difficult decision?" I watched Margaret's reflection in the window. "Or Charlotte's? How many others were there?" "You're missing the point, dear." Margaret turned, her smile razor sharp. "The question isn't how many. It's what happens next." My phone buzzed in my pocket, another message from Mark. "Got the files. It goes higher. Get out." "I should take this to the police," I said, gripping the USB drive. "Like you took the evidence about Ryan?" Jenna laughed bitterly. "Check the drive. The police captain's on the payroll. Has been for years." Margaret poured another drink. "You're in quite the position, Hannah. You could try to expose everything, watch this company crumble, destroy thousands of lives. Or you could take your rightful place. Ryan proved himself weak, but you have potential. Real potential." She gestured to the CEO chair. "This could all be yours." The room suddenly felt airless. "You knew about all of it. The women, the murders. I protected my family's legacy." Margaret's voice hardened. "Just like my mother did before me, and hers before that. Do you think empires are built on kindness?" My phone buzzed again. "Police chief found dead. Apparent suicide. Move now. Tick-tock, dear." Margaret smiled. "The board meets in an hour. They'll need to know who's really in charge now that Ryan's indisposed." Jenna stood abruptly. "I've told you everything. I want out." "Of course." Margaret nodded to someone behind me. I turned to see the security chief enter, his face expressionless. Jenna's eyes widened in recognition, or terror. "No," she whispered. "You promised." "I promised you'd be taken care of." Margaret waved her hand dismissively. "And you will be." The security chief moved toward Jenna. I stepped between them, my heart hammering. "Stop. Choose carefully, Hannah." Margaret's voice carried a deadly warning. "Power or principles? You can't have both." My phone buzzed one final time. Mom's old files decoded. Margaret killed her too. The pieces clicked into place. My mother's mysterious accident 15 years ago. Right after she'd started investigating Parker Enterprises' finances. Actually, I pulled out my phone, showing the recording app's running timer. "I can have justice." Margaret's mask slipped for just a moment. "You wouldn't dare." "Watch me." I grabbed Jenna's arm. "We're leaving. And if anything happens to either of us, everything goes public. Every detail. Every death. Every cover-up. You'll regret this," Margaret called as we backed toward the door. You have no idea what you're giving up. But I did. I was giving up power built on blood, an empire founded on bodies. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt clean. In the elevator, Jenna sagged against me. Where are we going? To meet my brother. I clutched my phone like a lifeline. And then we're going to burn it all down. The elevator descended, carrying us away from Margaret's web of lies. But I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The safe house Mark arranged felt more like a prison. 3 days since fleeing Margaret's office, and the walls kept closing in. Jenna paced by the window, jumping at every shadow, while I stared at my laptop screen until the numbers blurred. They found Sarah's body. Mark's voice cut through the silence as he entered, tossing a file onto the table. Construction site, just like Mom's case. The laptop clicked shut. How many others? 7 confirmed so far. Different states, different names. Same method. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. The FBI contact I reached out to. Found dead in his apartment this morning. Jenna stopped pacing. They're cleaning house. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number, missing you at the office. The board asks about their new CEO. Another message followed, check the news. The TV flickered to life, showing Ryan at a press conference, Margaret at his side. His face showed genuine remorse as he spoke. My wife's tragic breakdown has shocked us all. Her paranoid accusations and theft of company documents. Theft? I stood so quickly my chair toppled. They're framing me? Smart play, Jenna muttered. Discredit the whistleblower before she can blow the whistle. Mark switched channels. The story was everywhere. My photo, my history, carefully edited to paint the picture of an unstable woman driven mad by ambition and jealousy. Your psychiatric records have been altered, Mark said quietly. They're painting you as delusional, obsessed with conspiracy theories. The evidence we gathered? They'll say you fabricated it during a mental break. My phone buzzed again. The board votes tomorrow. Last chance to come home, dear. We need to release everything now, I said, reaching for the USB drive. They've thought of that too. Mark pointed to the screen where a financial expert discussed the potential economic devastation if Parker Enterprises collapsed. They've tied the company's fate to 3 major pension funds. You expose them, you bankrupt 500,000 retirees. Clever witch, Jenna whispered. She's made it impossible for you to be the hero. A sharp knock at the door made us freeze. Mark drew his gun, moving silently to the peephole. His shoulders relaxed slightly. It's Charlotte's brother. James entered, looking nothing like his photo. His face was gaunt, haunted. They're moving faster than we thought. The evidence you gathered? There's a fail-safe. If anything goes public, dozens of sealed documents get released, implicating innocent people in financial crimes. Margaret's insurance policy, I realized. She's been building it for years. Everyone's either complicit or compromised. Or dead, James added grimly. Like Sarah. Like Charlotte. Like your mother. My phone lit up one final time. The car crash wasn't quick, you know. Your mother had time to regret her choices. Don't make her mistakes. The room spun. I gripped the table edge, feeling the walls of Margaret's trap closing in. Release the truth, destroy countless lives. Stay quiet, let the murders continue. Fight back, watch more innocent people die. There's another way. Jenna's voice was steady for the first time in days. But you won't like it. What way? We give Margaret exactly what she wants. Jenna's eyes gleamed. You take the CEO position. That's suicide, Mark protested. No, it's perfect. Jenna stepped forward. You become what she wants, the perfect successor. The worthy heir. And And then we destroy it from the inside, I finished, understanding dawning. Not with exposure, but with careful, systematic dismantling. It could take years, James warned. Then it takes years. I picked up my phone, staring at Margaret's last message. She taught me well, patience, precision, playing the long game. Time to use those lessons against her. I typed my response, coming home, mother. See you at the board meeting. The die was cast. To save others, I would have to become what I hated most. To destroy Margaret's empire, would have to join it. Mark touched my shoulder. You don't have to do this. But I did. Because sometimes the only way to slay a monster is to become one yourself. At least for a while. The Parker Enterprises boardroom felt like a courtroom, with 20 pairs of eyes watching my every move. Margaret sat at the head of the table, resplendent in crimson, while Ryan slouched in his chair, defeat written across his features. The board recognizes Hannah Parker, Margaret announced, her voice carrying a note of triumph. Who has graciously agreed to resume her duties despite her recent difficulties. I stood, smoothing my black dress. Thank you, Margaret. But before we proceed, there's something the board should see. We've already addressed the unfortunate rumors, Margaret started. Not rumors. I pressed a button on my phone. The boardroom screens flickered to life, showing security footage from the construction site where they'd found Sarah's body. Facts. Ryan straightened. What are you doing? Showing everyone exactly what kind of company they're running. I advanced the footage. Watch carefully. You'll recognize the car. Margaret's hand tightened around her pen as her own vehicle appeared on screen, the timestamp matching the night of Sarah's disappearance. Turn it off, she commanded. Can't do that. I moved to the center of the room. Just like you couldn't stop the automated emails that just went out to every major news outlet, containing 40 years of buried evidence. Charlotte's murder. My mother's accident. Every single cover-up. You'll destroy everything, Ryan sputtered. The pensions are safe. I smiled. While you were busy framing me, I was transferring them to a secure trust. The only thing that's going to collapse is the house of cards you built on dead women's bones. Margaret stood slowly, her composure cracking. You ungrateful little. Careful, mother. I emphasized the word. The recording's still running. And the FBI agents in the lobby are very interested in every word. The boardroom erupted in chaos. Directors scrambled for their phones, watching their carefully constructed world implode in real time. You don't understand what you've done, Margaret hissed. The power you're throwing away. I understand perfectly. I met her gaze. You offered me an empire built on blood. I'm choosing justice instead. Ryan lunged for the door but found Mark waiting there, badge displayed. Ryan Parker, you're under arrest for the murder of Charlotte Bennett. You can't prove anything, Ryan sneered. Actually, Jenna stepped in from the hallway, I can. I kept receipts, Ryan. All of them. Margaret's laugh cut through the chaos. You think this ends here? I've survived worse. In a week, this will all be buried. No, Margaret. I placed a final document on the table. It won't. Because while you were teaching me to play the long game, I learned something you never did, the power of a paper trail. She snatched up the document, face draining of color as she read. These signatures. These accounts. Every murder. Every cover-up. All traced back to your personal orders. I leaned close. I'm my mother's daughter after all. And she taught me to always keep perfect records. The FBI flooded the room. As they led Margaret away, she turned back. I made you. No, I replied. You tried to break me. There's a difference. Hours later, I stood in my mother's old office, now mine, watching the news coverage of the Parker family's spectacular fall. Mark appeared in the doorway. You okay? Not yet. I touched the photo of our mother on the desk. But I will be. The trust fund's secure, the employees are protected, and the truth is finally out. And Margaret? We'll have plenty of time to reflect on her choices. I turned from the window. From a cell next to Ryan's. What about you? He studied my face. Running this company, even cleaned up, is a big responsibility. I smiled, thinking of all the lives touched by Parker Enterprises, all the good it could do under honest leadership. Someone once told me that power doesn't have to corrupt. It's time to prove that. The sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of justice long delayed but finally served. In my pocket, I carried my mother's old ledger, a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's reconstruction. The prison visiting room smelled of industrial cleaner and desperation. Ryan sat across from me, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame, his famous charm dimmed to a flicker. Come to gloat? His voice rasped. No. I placed the divorce papers between us. Come to end it properly. He stared at the documents, then at my face. You could have had everything. The company, the power. I have everything I need. I pushed a pen toward him. The company's being restructured. Employee owned now. Sarah's family is on the board. Saint Hannah. His laugh held no humor. Still trying to fix the world? Just the parts one can reach. I watched him sign, each stroke of the pen severing another tie. Margaret asked about you. His hand trembled slightly. And? I told her the truth. That her perfect son turned out just like her, willing to sacrifice anyone for power. I collected the papers. She cried. First real emotion I've seen from her. You've destroyed my family's legacy. No, Ryan. You did that. I stood. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Wait. He pressed his palm against the glass. What if I could give you something? Information about other companies, other families like ours? The old Ryan emerged for a moment, calculating, manipulative, always looking for an angle. I thought of Margaret in her cell, probably making similar deals. Keep it. I turned away. I'm done with revenge. Outside, Mark waited by the car. All done? Almost. I handed him a file. One last thing. The cemetery was quiet, morning dew still clinging to the grass. My mother's headstone had been replaced with a new one, the true date and cause of death finally carved in stone. She'd be proud, Mark said softly. She'd be furious I took so long. I placed a single rose and her restored accounting ledger against the granite. But I think she'd understand. My phone buzzed. Jenna, from her witness protection location, board approved the whistleblower protection program. Charlotte's brother says thank you. Another message followed from James. Sarah's scholarship foundation launches next week. You'll speak? The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders, different from the burden of revenge. Lighter somehow. Cleaner. Ready? Mark asked. 1 second. I traced our mother's name. You know what's funny? Margaret thought she was teaching me to be ruthless. Instead, she taught me the price of ruthlessness. And what are you going to teach others? I smiled, thinking of the company's new direction, the foundations being built, the safeguards being put in place. That power doesn't have to corrupt. That justice doesn't always mean destruction. That sometimes the best revenge is making sure it never happens again. Walking back to the car, I passed rows of graves, each marking a life, a story, a choice. Somewhere in the state penitentiary, Margaret was probably still plotting, Ryan still scheming. But their power was gone, transformed into something else entirely. My phone buzzed one final time, an unknown number. The message was brief: you've made powerful enemies. Watch your back. See. Another Charlotte? Or someone else entirely? The old me would have obsessed over it, started another investigation, sought more revenge. Instead, I deleted the message. Let them come. I wasn't afraid anymore. The Parker legacy of secrets and murder had ended with me, replaced by something stronger than fear or power or revenge. Truth. Mark started the car. Where to? Forward, I said simply, leaving the graveyard and its ghosts behind. The morning sun caught my mother's wedding ring, now on my right hand, not as a reminder of marriage, but as a promise to myself. Some people spend their lives seeking power. Others spend their lives fighting it. But there's a third path, using power to protect, to heal, to change. That was my legacy now. And unlike the Parkers, I intended to build it without burying anyone along the way. The car pulled away, carrying me toward whatever came next. I was ready. After all, the best stories don't end. They transform.